Greetings, O faithful followers of Xal'atath. It is I, Max Dragonwolf, and today we are trying to find good points among us. Today is a small commentator named Transformer Lightning McQueen. I mean Roadbreach. Got ahead of myself there.
On the eve or morning of May 12, 2021, Roadbreach uploaded the video titled Among Us Review, where he reviews the hit game Among Us. A hop, skip, and a WoW expansion later, a small CG channel named Netherlands uploaded a video titled The Worst Review of Among Us, Roadbreach, on July 30th, 2024. And powered by a zero wall theory of the 5 dragon aspects, Roadbreach made a video titled Among Us Fanboy Can't Keep the Same Energy. It is that video we will be covering. Now, this video has been taken down following some set that went down in the past and the present. All I have is a low quality recording of it because my video download just cannot download the entire video properly, so this is what I got for now.
Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Whether Tom Bizzo desires this video for her dog card.
Then it's off to a nice, safe, cooling dip in the— oh my god!
Hey everyone, Roadbreach here, and today we're responding to Netherless. Now you may be wondering, didn't he help you when you were getting slandered? Yes, he did do that. But that's not a shield for criticism, especially since he makes several disingenuous arguments throughout this video. Netherless decided to respond to my Among Us review that I made out of spite because I was sick and tired of people singing this game's praises for reasons I'll get into as we get through the video. Anyway, let's do this.
And today, we are going to be responding to a video from 3 years ago that is a completely horrendous review of the critically acclaimed party game, Among Us.
Okay, I was going to skip further, but I think this statement is kinda ironic. He brings up the fact that the game is critically acclaimed when he criticized me in the past for bringing up critic scores in my ex-Lucas rant. Didn't we agree that critic scores mean nothing when The Last of Us 2 got Game of the Year? So why do critic scores matter now? Oh, right, it's out of spite.
And we are barely a minute in. First off, citation needed. But I hate being a mofo who screams sauce at every claim ever made. It's important to back your claims up so people won't be looking for the evidence that you're supposed to provide. Now, that's not to say you should bring up every evidence on every claim, but if you're attempting to disprove an argument, we need to know whether or not your evidence exists. It does not scream honesty when people are looking for the evidence you're supposed to look for. And while I'm writing and recording this, I watched a few minutes of Netherlands' video, and I see a severe lack of critic scores being brought up to the point where it's pronounced dead at the hospital. I might be wrong, and if I am, I will put a post-edit note, so as long as post-editing Max doesn't forget.
So that's not getting into the hypocrisy of you criticizing Netherless for spite when you admitted that your initial review was made out of spite. Why is it fine, or at the very least okay, to admit your video was done out of spite, but when Netherless' point was done out of spite somehow, it's suddenly something worth criticizing?
Among Us was developed by Innersloth and published by Tom Brow, and was released on November 16th, 2018!
We're off to a phenomenal start with Roadbreach using completely unnecessary ear rape. I had to literally turn down the volume on that part because of how loud it was, just to put into perspective how unnecessarily loud that was. There is no punchline to the ear rape either, it's just him complaining about how despite the fact Among Us came out in 2018, it gained massive popularity in 2020. And the biggest factor on why Among Us blew up so much in that year is mainly because of the pandemic that year. So yes, Roadbreach is clearly just bitching in this clip for the sake of bitching.
Playing a game where you walk around playing the same shallow selection of minigames ad infinitum in one of the worst years in recorded history sounds like adding insult to injury. Of all the things you could do to keep yourself busy, you choose the video game equivalent of this meme.
Again, I love repetition!
Besides, it's not like there was a drought of multiplayer games to play that year.
Many video games can be repetitive. What makes them fun is the replayability, updates, and sides of story. You are aware of this, right? I know I never played a game you're playing in the background, but I can tell you for free that it can be seen as repetitive by your own standards. Oh, but Max, when the new content said game has that difference from the gameplay you're watching prevent from being repetitive even if it does new maps? Exactly. That's the point. If you're going to dunk on Among Us for being repetitive, then I expect you to look at the games even you play with the same lens. Also, every crewmate will have different tasks to do, many of them overlapping, but randomness can be generated by the maps, worlds, and what your experience of the game is. A video game being repetitive isn't inherently a bad thing, it's what we call a gameplay loop, and it will change with each new game.
On PC and mobile. This game has been popping up everywhere on social media, with tons of memes, fan art, and fan songs. I've avoided this game for a long time, and personally, I'm sick and tired of seeing it. It just looks like an unremarkable version of Club Penguin.
Bro is really comparing Among Us to Club Penguin? Why? Those are two completely different games from one another. One game is where people went around to socialize with others and play mini games with them. The other is a murder mystery. They are not comparable in the slightest. Even if you're talking about the aesthetics, they don't match in any capacity.
A good point. Taking a look at a screenshot from Club Penguin and Among Us, we can see that Club Penguin uses black outlines prior to its update, whereas Among Us uses colored outlines. That being said, Club Penguin still looks better due to the fact that the characters have an adequate amount of detail.
That's a nice argument. However, consider the following. A Club Penguin promotional artwork to an in-game sprite of Among Us. Like, I can give you this, Club Penguin art style has way more detail, but doesn't mean Among Us art style is bad, nor does it disprove Netherlands' point. If you're talking about the art style, then it doesn't match, because Club Penguin and Among Us are different games.
Good point, but Among Us bad.
With its cheap-ass presentation.
Cheap-ass presentation, as if Among Us was supposed to look pretty in the first place. Boo-hoo, they went with an incredibly simplistic art style, the same type of art style you'd see in the Henry Stickmin games. Which makes sense because both Among Us and Henry Stickmin were made by the same people. What, you want Among Us to have beautiful graphics in the likes of Death Stranding or something? Give me a break.
No, what I want is an adequate amount of detail, and for people to stop spamming these hideous backpack cunts anywhere and everywhere. Nobody besides you wants to fuck backpacks, I guarantee that.
Then clearly Among Us isn't for you. I have no clue why you're playing for bad for a review you made 3 years ago at the time of recording, as if your opinion is being censored.
Nice job, bitch! Oh my god!
But I've decided to play it for myself. After all, you don't judge a book by its cover, and you shouldn't judge a game by its graphics. So, how does this game hold up? Well, let's suit up and see what this game has to offer. Right off the bat, this game's graphics are unappealing.
Roadbreach, you just said you shouldn't judge a game by its graphics, yet here you are, judging the game by its graphics. And graphics isn't even the right term for it, it's just the art style of the game.
That's how my review format works. I start with the most obvious aspect of whatever I cover, and then I get into what isn't obvious upon first glance. And the art style for Among Us is dog shit.
Call this set a jab because it contributes nothing to the current lore.
And bro, look, I really don't think you should be a judge of a game's aesthetics when you make incredibly bad drawings like this and that. Imagine a game that looks like this. That would be visually unappealing.
It's funny you think I'm going to take your advice here. I'll judge the aesthetics of whatever I please. It's also hypocritical that you say the game looks fine, but then turn around and call my art style unappealing. And your copium in the comments is pretty pathetic too.
I don't know what Nailist did, but I can tell you it wasn't advice. A plotter at best and an ad hominem at worst, yes, but not advice.
And no, I will not be going over the thread because it's a general waste of time.
Oh my flying fuck.
I'm not suggesting that a game needs to have graphics on par with the Louvre, but at the same time, Undertale has a simplistic art style, but it's as charming as can be and reminds you of something that you'd see on the NES.
This can be applied to Among Us as well. Like I mentioned earlier, Among Us looks like a Flash game with the simplistic art style it has. People like that stuff. Just because it's not Undertale's art style doesn't mean it's ugly to look at. That's just your opinion.
Maybe you should keep that same energy. Furry art looks unappealing to you when it looks appealing to me. Among Us looks unappealing to me when you think it's charming. I really should not need to explain hypocrisy here.
Listen, I hate to be the Spock in the room, but your tone about the pasta is really starting to grate me. You could have at least just let it go, or address it without being overly angry and defensive. And that's coming from a guy with anger issues. Here, you can try something like this next time, assuming you ever get it next time. Now that's why you're perfectly in the right to not like my art. I find it hypocritical and yeoman that you argue that I'm allowed to have my taste, but then call my artwork terrible as though it's an objective fact. Even my art needs some work. But no, I get a page worth of interjections that are repeated ad nauseum. I hate it here.
As for music, well, what do we got here? We got serviceable, stock-sounding tunes not worth mentioning. Let's move on. Brr, but you mentioned them anyway. I don't care!
Oh wow, what a knee slapper, dude. So funny. You should really do stand-up comedy, Roadbreach. You got the whole squad laughing. On a serious note though, it's kinda crazy that you say the menu music in Among Us is just serviceable stock music. That's not worth mentioning. Did you know that the menu music is based on The Thing? You know, that really popular horror movie?
Yeah, I've heard of it. And I'm very certain that watching it would be an infinitely more fun experience than this pathetic video game homage. Which makes it even more funny that the actual Thing video game is pretty good.
Good point. However, I think the Thing video game is good, so take that. If I get one more interjection that boils down to something like this, I would get a free milkshake at the commentary bar every single time I visit.
Kinda like this is a retarded concept for a multiplayer game. What's next? Multiplayer stealth? Yeah, good luck with that.
Keep Roadbreach the fuck away from Dead by Daylight, I guess.
It makes a lot of sense they do something like that, especially with how the imposter is supposed to look and how the game is meant to be played. It's almost like you can't really put 2 and 2 together.
Or it could be that the music wasn't worth talking about, and comparing this to John Carpenter's The Thing is pretty insulting.
Unrelated, but there was a major problem with Roadbreach's video thus far, and I allowed it the grace to let it slide, but the more I don't address it, the more of a problem it becomes. For those of y'all who paid attention, you will know that Roadbreach called hypocrisy when Netherless Pot started his arc, claiming he's saying that the latter doesn't accept his subjective opinion, where subjectiveness is his main argument for Among Us. Whilst Roadbreach is somewhat right, it feels flat because there are moments like this where Roadbreach does the exact same thing. I mean, so, hypocrisy doesn't make you wrong, but your credibility goes down the drain if you're inconsistent.
The controls are abysmal. Every time you make a slight move with the joystick, you always go sailing off and smacking your stupid face into a fucking wall. It feels like I'm going to plow through the damn wall of this stupid spaceship because I feel like I'm traveling at the speed of goddamn light.
You do know that different lobbies have different settings, right? By the way, those lobby settings are horrendous. Why is the kill cooldown almost a minute long and the movement speed is ×3? That's ridiculous. Regardless though, you could always start your own lobby and create your own settings. It's not that hard. You're complaining about a non-issue that you decided to stick with instead of going to a different lobby that has different settings.
Actually, no, it is an issue. People regurgitate the same talking point when I say walking around playing the same tiny selection of minigames ad nauseum isn't fun.
It's a social deduction game.
And you agree these settings are terrible. Okay then why the fuck are you able to change them in the first place?
Make the game more customizable. Don't like the settings? Nothing you can do about it. Just leave and try a different one. It's that simple. Also, the fact that Among Us is a social deduction game has nothing to do with the settings. Guys, post-head Max here. Guess who just so happened to notice the fact that Roadbreach made the lobby he is complaining about? I had a feeling, but when I reviewed a clip, I saw this. So in other words, Roadbreach is complaining about a case that was literally of its own making. You cannot make this shit up. I don't know if anybody noticed since nobody's seen that mentioned, but if... Anyways, let's move on.
Serge, don't forget the Dark Lady has plans for you. You're not allowed to die without her consent.
Or make your own. It's not that difficult. Among Us lobbies fill up really quickly. They still do, to this day.
I'd rather traverse the sea of rust than make a lobby in this game.
And with that, this sinful soul hath admitted he did not want to approach Among Us with good faith in mind and only made a review just to show the game that isn't for him. Cast him to the maw.
But that's only the role of the crewmates. What about the imposter? I don't know. In every match I participated in, I was a crewmate. But I'm not going to keep playing until I get randomly assigned the role of the imposter, because fuck off.
So instead of giving the game an actual fair chance, you decided to just denigrate it even further because you never cared to play as the imposter. This is pretty much a completely unfair review at this point, because he's missing out like half of the game if he doesn't care enough to play more and potentially become the imposter. And I personally think that playing as the imposter is the most fun you could ever have while playing Among Us, especially if you're playing with friends.
Yeah, maybe because the same shit minigames over and over again, some of which I could find in a paper activity book, wasn't worth the minuscule chance that I could possibly get the imposter role. If 90% of the time I try this game is just tedious busy work, then I'm not going to be encouraged to keep slogging through it for that tiny possibility that I may get to do the one fun thing that this game has in it. Life is short, too short to slog through self-inflicted tedium.
Girly pop. Were you expecting some genuinely hard challenges? Give me a break. If the simplicity of the attacks are not worth being the imposter, then the game isn't for you, and that's okay.
But making that review is essentially a problem because it isn't a review at this rate. It's you sitting on Among Us for the sake of it.
And since you keep defending the review, that means you stand by your bad faith view on the game. I'm honestly realizing how much of the drama regarding this video could have been avoided if you calmed the fuck down and post things with good faith.
But from what I've seen, you need to blend in with the rest of your crew and kill them off one by one. So, if a body gets found, crew member can report it, and you need to blend in with the rest of the crew and avoid getting cleared off. So, it's best to hide your victims. The biggest problem with this is that after a while, after this game has been out for a long time, people start to get good at it, and it comes to a point when a match ends so early because you end up figuring out who the imposter is just that quickly.
No, that just means that the imposter you're playing against is a bad imposter. Normally, when a match ends that quickly in Among Us, that means the imposter made a mistake right in the beginning and they couldn't make a proper alibi. Then again, there's no need for them to even make an alibi. You're playing in public lobbies, which are infamous for getting random people voted off if you happen to stumble upon the wrong people. It's also much harder to use the chat on mobile than it is on PC, which is why it's most preferred for me to play this on PC. Also, people getting good at Among Us is not a problem in the game. Crewmates are not exclusively the smarter players. The imposters can be really good too if they play their cards right. Sabotage the area to distract crewmates, hide the bodies, come up with an alibi, and you can easily win as the imposter. You wouldn't even know how to properly play the imposter anyways because you self-admittedly didn't care enough to play as the imposter for this review.
Maybe if the minigames were better, then I might be inclined to do that. You can tell me it's a murder mystery all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that most of the game is spent on unimpressive minigames that I need to convince myself to slog through to play the only good part of the game.
Completing those tasks will speed up the game, as doing them will guarantee a win, which will speed up the chances of you being an imposter. Then again, why am I educating someone on a game they clearly have a hate burning for and refuse to look at it critically? I swear this entire segment would have been avoided if critics did their job.
This isn't the Hello Kitty store?
No, it's Hot Topic.
What's the topic? Devil Worship?
And the structure of the game doesn't allow for much longevity in the long run. The game's structure is just fundamentally flawed.
How is it fundamentally flawed? It's a social deduction game. Social deduction games can be really fun when playing with friends. If Among Us is flawed because of that, then so are games like Werewolf and Town of Salem. It sounds more like Among Us isn't your type of game, mostly because you're stupid and can't pick up on social cues, which was evident by the way because we recently played Among Us with him a few weeks ago, but that's besides the point. We're talking about his review, not the recent playthroughs we had with him.
I'm sure any shit game can be more fun with friends, because you can all commiserate with how shit the game is. But games like Concord, Anthem, and Crucible are either no longer with us, or have no online functionality because they were either repetitive or poorly designed, with Suicide Squad not being far behind. And yet, this piece of shit is still with us. Because...
Damn, brother. You really compare a social deduction game to a first-person shooter, an RPG, and a third-person shooter? Does thou happen to have more video games that cannot be compared to Among Us through genre?
If the game did something like switch up the minigames every round, and or added new ones to make the variety better, then I wouldn't be so miserable playing it. And I don't think I need to be Shockwave in order to find playing the same thing over and over again with the subtext of a murder mystery to be an unenjoyable experience.
Fun fact, did you know that crewmates are assigned different tasks with some of them sharing the same task? In fact, if all of them complete our tasks in season, only victory was them. Wow, ain't it so? Here's another fun fact. I am fucking tired of repeating myself.
The reason why I like Splatoon 2 over Among Us is because that game actually provides a little bit of a challenge.
Again, what is with these comparisons? First Club Penguin, now Splatoon? Splatoon's not even close to the same category of game as Among Us. And yes, Among Us can be challenging. If the imposter ends up being really good, that is the challenge. Figuring out who it is and surviving.
Yeah, good luck finding a smart imposter in the fucking first place.
Roadbreach, you can't talk of smart imposters considering your brain couldn't be patient to be an imposter.
I shouldn't need to gamble every time I jump into a multiplayer game for a fun time. Sure, any game can be impacted if you run into idiots online, but I've had far better odds having fun with other genres regardless of how smart my teammates might be. It's not imperative that the other people I play against are smart in games like COD, Crash Team Racing, or Fall Guys. It's another reason why I hate this game along with this genre.
Insult point about how Roadbreach could have moved on and recognized the game is not for him or direct payment type.
Like, my guy, you've already lost the debate if you're comparing Among Us to games like Splatoon.
Do cry me several oceans. At least Splatoon isn't useless when I play public lobbies.
After you pot calling the kettle black. Guys, I don't think I have enough constitution to progress.
It provides constant stimulation, which is something that Among Us just doesn't do.
The stimulation in Among Us comes from the social deduction, which is the fundamental part of the game. If you don't get stimulation from that, then this game wasn't meant for you in the first place. Comparing this game to Splatoon is incredibly stupid, because Splatoon is not a social deduction game. It's a shooter where you have to conquer more territory than the other. So again, I don't know how you can make this comparison, except for the fact you're really dumb.
Or it could be the fact that the game will almost always be more fun due to the fact that I don't need to have my friends join in whenever I play it to have a good time. And has far more variables to keep the game interesting. Things like weapons, sub-weapons, new players shuffling into the game every round, and different gear that changes the stats you have. Among Us has only one of those things. It's not stupid to want some fucking variety.
Well, you're in luck, Roadbreach, because Among Us has added new content to the game since your review, such as but not limited to banners, more elaborate customization to the character, new worlds, and even new maps. My oh god, you are about as sufferable as an anti-woke mobster who thinks a woman who is slightly unattracted to Dark Center makes the game bad and blows the line between having a take and straight up being a bigot while claiming the latter is based. Despite how you want to portray the narrative via a meme in your community post, you aren't getting silent for not liking Among Us. You're being silent for making a terrible review on the game using subjective takes and passing them off as objective, and making comparisons that don't connect to how unfair for all for the sake of it. You are effectively saying, oh, Star Wars, the Skywalker saga is bad because it's not World of Warcraft. It doesn't compare because there are two different games with different genres. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, yes, but opinions can and will be wrong. When you get taken attacked for a bad take, it isn't you being attacked for having an opinion, the end. It's you being challenged for having a bad take on something.
In Splatoon 2, you're making sure that you have the most upward-facing surface area covered with your ink. In Among Us, you walk around and doing remedial tasks that are barely stimulating at all.
The mini-games in Among Us are not supposed to be stimulating. That's something you have to do in the background and is also a key factor that forces the imposter to do something. Because guess what? If the imposter doesn't kill everybody by the time everybody completes their tasks, the imposter loses. But the most stimulating part of Among Us is the social deduction aspect, where everyone has to figure out who the imposter is. And for the imposter, the stimulating part for that role is killing the crewmates and being good at it without getting ejected. Stop with this comparison to Splatoon. It's really stupid.
No, I'm not. You spend most of the game playing the same minigames every damn round. You can call it a background thing all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that it's most of what you do in the game, with the social deduction being a tiny portion of every round. Either make the best minigames ever made, or add some new ones, and change them every round.
You know what? Fuck it. I'm not gonna tell Roadbreach about how flawed this points are again without repeating myself or nailing this point. I will rather not be a broken letter, instead let me try a little something. Splatoon is bad because all you do is to paint all over the map for hours on end without anything new to provide. Compared to World of Warcraft, Splatoon is an unstimulating mess that does not provide anything of value. If you don't understand what I'm trying to do here, don't worry, it will hit you in the head like a slam mode sooner or later or days from now.
In Splatoon 2, you have many different options to customize your playstyle. In Among Us, you don't get diddly dick for customizing your playstyle at all.
I mean, besides the roles that we got later down the line, there's not much you can really add to this type of game in terms of playstyle. It's literally a game of whodunit. What more do you want? This isn't a Call of Duty game, my guy.
I want more variety in the minigames, and I want Among Us fans to quit harassing people who use words that were just part of the dictionary, or having something that slightly looks like one of these ugly cunts you play as in this fucking dumpster fire.
What a coincidence. I wanted to actually make an actual point, or at the very least acknowledge the game's changes over the years. Following your review instead of dick riding your original points about how shitty you are to the point and mistaking you for an object sexual. But in the end, we can't all get what we want, right?
Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from with these complaints and comparisons.
No, I don't think anybody knows where you're coming from, because your comparisons and complaints do not make sense.
Yet I'm the one who can't put two and two together?
Yes! Oh my god, yes, you can't put two and two together.
Don't for a second tell me that Five Nights at Freddy's or Undertale have a bad fan base when Among Us fans will come out of the woodworks and randomly blurt out its name for no goddamn reason. Don't come to me and tell me that Five Nights at Freddy's is try hard when Among Us doesn't try in the slightest.
You're comparing the Among Us community, a community that likes to spam Among Us when they see something that vaguely looks like a crewmate, to two different communities that are not only extremely degenerate, but are also notorious for having some of the most disgusting people within them, pedophiles included. You know that's why those communities get attacked so much, right? Because there are genuinely some disgusting people in those communities, and yet I haven't heard a single horrible person that's within the Among Us community.
Go fuck yourself. No, seriously, go fuck yourself, Nier. Of all the things that I would have expected from you, I wouldn't have expected whataboutism of all things. You try to paint it as pedophilia is just something that's accepted within either community, as if they aren't kicked out and ostracized the second they get found out. Like a former fan game dev, Blackout, or former illustrator, Pinky Pills, both of whom have been kicked to the curb once people found out what they did. You are literally using the relative privitation fallacy here.
Okay, first of all, that was whataboutism. All none of this did was disprove your point by pointing how the Undertale FNAF fandom has done far worse than something that was simply annoying. That's not whataboutism, that's just using your argument to disprove it. If you're gonna call out flaws in arguments, do it properly. Secondly, Netless never implied that pedophilia was a-okay within either FNAF or Undertale's fandom. The degenerate thing, on the other hand, I'm a bit iffy on the idea since from what I've seen, Netless' definition of degenerate seems very broad for lack of a better term, but my point stands nonetheless. Also fallacy.
Not only that, but I managed to find some pedophiles in Among Us just by searching it up on YouTube. Should we use the group fallacy here too? No, because that's disingenuous. And it still doesn't change the fact that obnoxious people are still obnoxious. Any fandom can have shitty people in them.
Guess what, Roadbreach? Nobody is arguing against you on that. Netless will agree with the fact there will be shitty people in every fandom, considering he's literally in a commentary community, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
So there, I explained why I hate this game in a much more thorough fashion, and showed the dishonest arguments made throughout this video.
I fucking ass. All you did was your way out of jail. Sit your Transformer Lightning McQueen ass down.
Now you may be wondering why I decided to respond after 2 months. And to that, I say I decided to take some advice.
I do not plan on repeating myself when I tried giving you this piece of advice, Roadbreach. Grow a fucking spine.
Anyways, that's the end of Roadbreach's video. Nothing of value other than him saying, gotta zoom, yeah, I hope you zoom into a wall. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Today's artist of the month is Howlite. Howlite is an artist who draws all sorts of things, mostly Warcraft and related stuff. I encountered her in the heart on DE-YEETED before I started singing AI Sausage. Her available platforms on Twitter, Blue Sky, Fortnite, and other websites. I'll be linking her card down below. Anyways, don't forget to comment on my Q&A, which you have until January 22nd. Make sure you like, sub, and comment if you want. Thank you for watching. I'm Max Dragonwolf, now ready to turn 18 this month, and logging off. Hail Xal'atath.